The Council of Jews in Germany turns 75. I will talk with Josef Schuster, the president of the council, about his work, his views, and of course about the rising anti-Semitism in Germany.
Mr. Schuster, you are celebrating 75 years of the Central Council of Jews in Germany. In 1945, the Shoah was over. Just 5 years later, in 1950, the Central Council was founded as a representative body, as a religious, social, but also as a political body in the country of the perpetrators. That's actually amazing. How much courage and strength did it take back then?
The founding of the Central Council in 1950 was not the first step in Jewish life after the Shoah. Surprisingly, a whole series of Jewish communities were refounded in the summer of 1945, the year the war ended. For example, in Munich or in Würzburg. With the increase in the number of Jewish communities, it certainly made sense to have an interest group that represented the interests of the newly founded Jewish communities, and in particular provided assistance to the people who were organized in those communities. Because people were not thinking of re-establishing Jewish life permanently in Germany, but instead the idea was to help people who wanted to continue on their path, be it to Israel or to the USA or elsewhere in the world.
Matters developed differently. Jewish life in Germany grew. Where does it stand today, 75 years later?
75 years after its founding, we now have lively Jewish life throughout Germany, really from Flensburg to Munich, from Aachen to Cottbus, in 105 Jewish communities. In this respect, one might think that everything is fine. Jewish life is flourishing. In one way that's true, but in another way it's not, because especially since the 7th of October 2023, when Hamas attacked Israel, we have unfortunately also faced increasing anti-Semitism and hatred against Jews in Germany.
There are now 250,000 Jews in Germany. About half of them are members of the Jewish community. The number has also been declining slightly since 2006 because not so many Jewish immigrants resettling from the former Soviet Union have arrived. How do you see the future?
The Jewish communities have a demographic problem. The aging process leads to the fact that you correctly described. The number of community members has decreased somewhat. I think this will continue for a while. There will be consolidation. I can imagine that this or that Jewish community will merge with a nearby community. There may not be 105 Jewish communities then, but I'm not worried that Jewish communities might not continue to exist throughout Germany.
The Central Council is the association of all Jewish communities, whether Orthodox or liberal. You are not a supreme religious authority with decision-making powers, as we know it from the Christian churches, from the Catholic Church, for example. You are a cultural association and, above all, a political body.
The task of the Central Council is to represent the interests of the Jewish people in Germany politically, regardless of their religious orientation. You said it, regardless of denomination. Under the umbrella of the Central Council, there are both Orthodox-led congregations and liberal congregations. Under the umbrella of the Central Council, there are also 2 rabbinical training centres, Orthodox and liberal. And there's also a corresponding association of rabbis on the Orthodox and also on the liberal side.
75 years after the Central Council was founded, the number of anti-Semitic incidents, of crimes against Jews and other incidents is higher than ever before. Why is that?
Woran liegt das?
If I had the answer to this question, it would be easier to fight against it. It is also incomprehensible why, for example, prejudices against decisions made in Israel are projected onto Jews in Germany, who are German citizens. I can't help but get the impression that age-old anti-Jewish stereotypes, which are still present in the population, somewhere beneath the surface at least, come to the fore again in such situations.
This increase in anti-Semitic incidents has been seen over the last 10 years. So not only in the last 2 years since Hamas attacked Israel and Israel then reacted militarily and started the war in Gaza. Is the fact that this has been increasing for so long related to an increasing right-wing extremist attitude in Germany?
It's a question of chicken and egg. Which came first? The fact is that we're getting further and further away in time from the Shoah. In the years after the Shoah, I believe that the events of the Third Reich were much more present in people's minds. That generated a certain degree of protection against racism and anti-Semitism. The generation that lived through that no longer exists, or almost does not exist anymore. And in the younger generations, we see that the historical events, what happened in history, are slowly moving further away. For them, it's becoming the past, and it's no longer projected onto the present.
The AfD party, which is to a great extent a right-wing extremist party, has celebrated major electoral successes in the last 10 years. You once said that if the AfD at some point actually takes over government in Germany, then it would be time for Jews to leave the country. Is that true?
I said this sentence, and I stand by this sentence unchanged. I cannot imagine a radical right-wing party like the AfD participating in a government at the federal level in a way that's compatible with Jewish life.
You also mentioned that Jews in Germany are often equated with Israel or the Israeli government. Why is there no differentiation? That there is this prejudice? Is it perhaps in part because the Central Council and also the German government are very much on the side of Israel and the Israeli government, especially in the current conflict?
To be honest, I don't think that is the reason. It is a fact that the Central Council and also the members of the Council and myself, of course, have sympathy for Israel. Quite simply, in history, if there had been a country like Israel, to which, as Israeli law says, every Jew has the right to immigrate at any time, events would not have happened as they did. So it should not be surprising that people here, including me, certainly do not always see the decisions in Israel objectively, or that the German government has a corresponding attitude towards the Jewish state after the events of the Third Reich. But that does not mean that all decisions made by the Israeli government are therefore approved by everyone in the German government or by all Jews in Germany.
So one should differentiate more between the government of Benjamin Netanyahu and the Jews in Germany.
Exactly, quite so.
Then the question is, why doesn't this happen? Do people want to cultivate prejudice against Jews, so to speak, or what is the reason for this?
I believe that if we had the solution or knew the cause, we would certainly find it easier to combat the situation. The fact is that some people are very happy to equate a government in Israel and the actions of a government in Israel with Jews all over the world, which is clearly wrong. When does it become a problem? It becomes problematic when the 3 Ds are applied, when Israel is demonized, when double standards are applied to Israel that are not applied to other countries, or Israel is delegitimized, i.e. the right of the State of Israel to exist is denied. Apart from that, to criticize a government, be it the Netanyahu government or theoretically also decisions of the German government, that is something quite legitimate in a democracy.
We are in the building of the Central Council of Jews in Berlin. There are police in front of the building. In Berlin alone there are about 200 Israeli and Jewish institutions which need to be permanently protected by the police. Some Jews face trouble if they identify themselves as Jews in public. Do you still feel safe?
We have to differentiate. You mentioned Berlin. To openly identify oneself as a Jew by wearing a kippah or a Star of David has indeed become problematic in quite a few neighborhoods in Berlin, and I expressly regret that. But Berlin is not Germany. We have different situations. We have problems in cities like Berlin, in big cities like Frankfurt. But in many places in the Federal Republic of Germany, you can move around as a Jew without having to worry.
You're wearing the ribbon for the hostages who are still in the hands of Hamas. There are probably 5 of these hostages who are still alive, who are German citizens. Do you think the German government is doing enough to get them out? Isn't it necessary to put more pressure on Hamas, of course, but also on Israel, on the government there?
I think we have to be clear. The whole conflict, including the situation of the hostages, would be resolved in one day if Hamas laid down its arms and released the hostages. The whole conflict would be over. So the key lies with Hamas.
Of course, the Central Council of Jews deals with these political issues. You have spoken about that. But there's also another side. You also promote cultural life, youth work, sports and other things. For example, I see that there's something called Jew-Eurovision. This is a play on words, of course, based on the Eurovision Song Contest. What goes on at Jew-Eurovision?
Was machen Sie da bei Eurovision?
It's a music and dance competition for the youth centres of the Jewish communities. A motto is given, and once a year on a weekend, the youth groups meet and present their contribution, around 4 minutes long, with music and dance on this topic.
Beitrag dazu, also ein circa 4-minütiger Beitrag mit Musik und Tanz.
It's a competition that has become very established. It attracts about 1,500 to 2,000 spectators at each location and is of inestimable value for the young people to get to know other young people and share the community experience.
Von einem unschätzbaren Wert ist.
There's also a joyful Jewish life, not only anti-Semitism.
There is absolutely also happy Jewish life, not only the problem of anti-Semitism, thank God.
Mr. Schuster, thank you very much.
You're welcome.